Mia Jensen was the kind of person everyone trusted, kind, predictable, and always on time. Mark Denslow was the kind of man no one noticed, quiet, unremarkable, and invisible in plain sight. But when Mia vanished without a trace one cold November morning, their paths collided in a way that would uncover one of the darkest secrets Elmridge, Oregon had ever known. This wasn't just a missing person case. It was the beginning of a nightmare, one that revealed a predator hiding behind a familiar face, and a town forced to confront just how much evil can hide behind silence. Elmridge, Oregon wasn't the kind of place where bad things happened. Nestled between tall pine forests and gentle rolling hills, the town had a quiet rhythm. People knew their neighbors. Kids played in front yards until the streetlights came on. The biggest local news usually involved bake sales or lost pets. That's why when Mia Jensen vanished, it didn't just confuse the town, it shook it. Mia was the kind of person everyone liked. She had lived in Elmridge her whole life. At 25, she had just started building the life she'd always dreamed of. She taught at Little Pines Daycare, just a short walk from her apartment. She loved her job, her students, and the simple comfort of routine. Every weekday morning, she left her small upstairs unit at 7:30, coffee in hand, and strolled 2 blocks. Through town, her route never changed. She always passed the same storefronts, always waved to the same neighbors. By 7:45, she'd be unlocking the door to the daycare. But Friday, November 3rd, 2018, was different. That morning, Mia didn't arrive. At first, her coworkers thought she might be running late. Maybe her alarm didn't go off, or she was stuck in traffic, even though she didn't drive. But by 8:30, concern had set in. Calls to her phone went straight to voicemail. Texts went unanswered. Worked on UC aunts. Kyle, who worked in another town and had already left for work, was unreachable until after 9 o'clock, when he finally returned there. Calls, panic began to rise. By late morning, someone called the police. Officers went to Mia's apartment to do a welfare check. The front door was locked. No signs of forced entry. With the landlord's permission, they entered. What they found was unsettling. The apartment was spotless, almost too neat. A half-drunk mug of coffee sat on the counter. Her phone charger was plugged in, but her phone was missing. Her purse, the same one she always carried, was sitting on the kitchen table. Her coat and shoes were gone, suggesting she had left of her own free will. But there was no sign of where she'd gone. The bed was made. The windows were locked. Nothing was disturbed. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no broken items. It was as if Mia had stepped outside for a moment and never returned. Her schedule, so reliable it could be predicted down to the minute, had been disrupted without warning. The strangest part was the silence. No message, no goodbye, no clue. It wasn't just unusual, it was impossible. Word spread fast in the small town. By the end of the day, missing person flyers were already being printed. Friends and neighbors gathered to help search. Social media lit up with her photos, shared hundreds of times. But no one had seen her leave. No one had heard anything. It was as if Elmridge had swallowed her whole, and for the first time in years. The people of Elmridge felt something unfamiliar, fear. As the hours passed, and Mia remained missing, unease settled heavily over Elmridge. By the next morning, a full-scale search was underway. Volunteers combed the sidewalks, parks, and wooded areas near town. Police knocked on doors, questioning neighbors and local shop owners, but no one had seen Mia that morning. Surveillance cameras along her usual route offered nothing. She hadn't passed the corner bakery or the gas station, both of which captured footage daily. It was as if she had simply vanished between her front door and the daycare. A distance of just 2 blocks. Theories began to form, each more unsettling than the last. Had she been abducted in broad daylight? Had someone followed her without being seen? Or, as some quietly speculated, had she chosen to disappear? But those who knew Mia dismissed the idea instantly. She had no history of depression, no reason to run, and she'd just made plans to move into a new house with Kyle in less than a month. She'd even spoken with her mother on the phone the night before and sounded perfectly normal, excited even. Nothing about her behavior hinted at anything troubling. The police worked quickly. Her phone was still off or dead, untraceable. Accounts showed no activity. Her social media had gone silent. As days turned into a week, the tone of the investigation shifted. It was no longer a missing person case. It was something more serious. Authorities brought in cadaver dogs to search wooded areas, and dive teams checked nearby rivers and ponds. Nothing was found. No clothing, no belongings, no sign of a struggle. Each lead led to another dead end. The community continued to search, refusing to give up. Her photo-soft brown hair, warm eyes, and a kind smile was everywhere. Flyers covered light poles, car windows, and bulletin boards. People began locking their doors for the first time in years. Parents stopped letting their children walk home alone. The safety bubble that had surrounded Elmridge was gone. Then, nearly a month after Mia disappeared, a break finally came. A jogger on a wooded trail just outside town noticed something shiny in the dirt. Curious, he stepped closer and found a smartphone half buried under a layer of leaves and dirt. He called police immediately. The phone, dirty and cracked, still had a case with stickers on the back stickers that matched those on Mia's phone. A quick test confirmed it. Hers, the discovery sent shockwaves through the investigation. The trail where the phone was found was not on Mia's usual route. In fact, it was on the opposite side of town, far from where she would have walked that morning. It didn't make sense. Had someone taken her there? Had she gone willingly? Police analyzed the phone and made a chilling discovery. Her GPS data revealed that, on the morning she vanished, Mia had walked down a side street she never used. For exactly 6 minutes, she veered away from her normal path and then, nothing. Data stopped. That detour would become the key to a mystery far darker than anyone in Elmridge had imagined. The side street Mia had walked down on the morning of her disappearance led to the edge of town, to a part few people visited anymore. Once an industrial area, it was now filled with abandoned buildings and warehouses long out of use. Among them stood a crumbling brick structure that had once housed the town's largest textile mill. It had been shut down for over a decade, windows boarded, roof partially collapsed, and nature slowly reclaiming its walls. Was at the end of this road that Mia's GPS signal had stopped? The warehouse was sealed off by a rusted chain link fence, but police gained access and began a methodical search. The inside was cold, dark, and heavy with the smell of mildew. Graffiti covered the walls. Trash and broken glass littered the floor. It looked like a place forgotten by time. But in one of the interior rooms, far from the entrance, officers found something that made their blood run cold: a single earring. A small smear of blood on the concrete and a set of plastic zip ties tossed in the corner. The earring matched the ones Mia had worn in a recent reformed photo. Tests confirmed the blood belonged to Mia. Her presence in that building was no longer a theory, it was fact. But what had happened to her inside those walls remained unclear. There were no footprints leading in or out, and no evidence of who else might have been there. Still, the warehouse became the center of the investigation. For days, forensic teams combed through the space, but beyond that small cluster of evidence, they found nothing else conclusive. It was like the trail had ended again, only slightly further along. Attention turned to Mia's personal life. Investigators dug into her past, looking for anyone with a reason to harm her. Her fiancé Kyle was quickly ruled out. He'd been at work in another town at the time of her disappearance, with security footage and coworkers confirming his alibi. Friends and family had nothing but good things to say about their relationship.
Oh, yeah.
But one name kept surfacing: Rianne Lang, Mia's ex-boyfriend. Ryan and Mia had dated 2 years earlier. Their breakup had been messy. Police learned he had shown up uninvited at her workplace months after they ended things, that Mia had considered filing a restraining order but never went through with it. Ryan had left Elmridge soon after. When detectives tried to track him down, they found something strange. He had moved out of state, but had recently rented a storage unit under a false name just 1 mile from the warehouse. When police obtained a warrant and opened the storage unit, they braced themselves for what they might find. But inside was only a single sheet of paper taped to the concrete wall. On it, printed in thick block letters, was a chilling message. I never touched her. Look closer. The note raised more questions than answers. Had Ryan planted it to mislead the investigation? Or was it a desperate warning pointing towards someone else? With no further evidence inside the unit, the case once again stood at the edge of darkness, teetering between truth and something much more terrifying. Weeks passed with no new leads. The warehouse and the cryptic message in the storage unit had given investigators hope of a breakthrough, but they remained stuck. Ryan Lang was still missing. Every attempt to locate him led to dead ends. He hadn't used his social security number, phone, or bank account in over a month. It was as if he'd vanished right along with Mia. But detectives weren't convinced he was the person behind her disappearance. Something about the storage unit felt theatrical, almost like a setup, and the wording of the note looked closer, stuck with them. Out of options. Investigators revisited the forensic evidence from the warehouse. Second review of the blood sample uncovered something they had missed the first time. The DNA wasn't from just one person, it had two distinct profiles. One belonged to Mia. The other matched someone in the National Criminal Database, Mark Denslow. The name wasn't familiar to Mia's friends or family, but a search of employment records revealed that Denslow had worked as a night security guard at the textile mill almost 5 years earlier. Just before it shut down, Mark Denslow had a quiet, unremarkable life on paper. He lived alone on the outskirts of town, worked occasional shifts at a trucking company, and had no immediate family. But his record raised red flags. He had a prior arrest for assault during a domestic dispute years earlier and had been questioned, though never charged. In a missing persons case in Washington state back in 2011, that case had gone cold. No connection had been made until now. Police brought Denslow in for questioning. He was calm and cooperative, but offered little useful information. He claimed he hadn't been near the warehouse in years and denied any involvement with Mia. When asked about the blood match, he simply said he had no explanation. His story was vague and emotionless, without physical evidence tying him directly. To Mia's disappearance, police had no grounds to hold him yet, but suspicion was mounting. Investigators obtained a warrant to search his property. On the surface, his home was ordinary. But in a crawl space beneath the floorboards, they made a disturbing discovery. Inside an old wooden crate were dozens of personal items, lipsticks, necklaces, photos, even hair ties. They appeared to belong to multiple women. At the bottom of the box was a delicate silver chain with a small charm in the shape of a pine tree. Mia had worn it every day. Her fiancé had given it to her when she first got her teaching job. Case turned. Mark Denslow was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping and murder. As investigators began to look into his past, a horrifying pattern emerged. 5 other women had vanished over the last 10 years from small towns across Oregon and Washington. All of them shared physical similarities with Mia. All had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. In each case, Denslow had either lived nearby or worked in the area. Suddenly, Mia's disappearance didn't look like an isolated event. It looked like part of a long and carefully hidden chain. Authorities now believed they had uncovered the work of a serial predator, one who had operated under the radar for years, leaving behind no bodies and almost no evidence. The quiet man, living on the edge of town, had been hiding something monstrous all along: the arrest of Mark. Denslow sent a wave of shock through Elmridge and beyond. A man who had lived quietly among them, mowing his lawn on weekends and shopping at the same grocery store as everyone else, was now believed to be a serial predator. The evidence discovered in the crawlspace of his home, particularly Mia's necklace, was enough to formally charge him with her kidnapping and presumed murder. Yet despite the mounting case, one crucial piece remained missing: Mrs. body. Without a body, closure was hard to come by. Denslow refused to confess. During every interrogation, he maintained a calm demeanor, offering vague statements or simply remaining silent. He never acknowledged knowing Mia or any of the other missing women. Still, the physical evidence was damning, and the prosecutor moved forward with the case. The trial began nearly a year after Mia's disappearance and drew media attention from across the country. In court, Prosecutors detailed the disturbing contents found beneath Denslow's house, linking several items to the other missing women. The jury listened to testimony from forensic experts, law enforcement officers, and families who had spent years wondering what had happened to their daughters and sisters. One by one, a horrifying portrait came into focus, a man who had blended into small-town life, choosing his victims carefully, leaving just enough behind to keep authorities guessing, but never enough to be caught. Until Mia, the defense offered no alternate suspect. Instead, they attempted to cast doubt on the reliability of the evidence, emphasizing the lack of eyewitnesses and pointing to the absence of bodies as a reason to question the charges. But the jury wasn't swayed. After 2 weeks of deliberation, Denslow was found guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Mia's family, the verdict brought a sense of justice, but not peace. Without knowing where she was, without being able to say goodbye, the pain remained sharp and constant. Every year on the anniversary of her disappearance, the community gathered at the local park to hold a vigil. Candles flickered in the wind, and her favorite songs were played softly in the background. They left behind photos, flowers, and handwritten letters, hoping somehow that Mia would know she wasn't forgotten. The investigation into the other 5 missing women was reopened. With Denslow in custody, cold case units across multiple states began re-examining old files. Some families finally received answers, others still wait. The warehouse where Mia's blood was found has since been torn down. In its place stands an empty field, quiet, unmarked, and eerie. Elmridge, once known for its tranquility, will never be the same. Parents are more protective. Neighbors look at each other differently. The memory of Mia Jensen lingers in every quiet street and every missing person flyer posted on a bulletin board. Her case reminded the town and the world that sometimes real monsters don't hide in shadows. They walk in daylight, unnoticed until it's too late. And sometimes, even when justice is served, the most disturbing stories never truly end.